Torgoth Epilogue. Chapter 1. The Axe Lord of the March. For a season, men called it peace. Torgoth's keep stood on the hard edge between settled road and ancient wood, where the last farmsteads of Loudwater's Reach gave way to the shadowed vastness of the high forest. It had once been a broken border fortress, a forgotten pile of stone claimed by moss, owls, and the occasional bandit lord, too foolish to understand how close he slept to old elven arrows. Torgoth made it his. He repaired the walls first, then he raised a longhole. Then came the palisade, the watchtowers, the cattle pens, the smithy, the shrinestones, the fighting yard, and the ring of lodges outside the keep where his kinsmen began to gather. At first, they came in twos and threes, Uthgard wanderers, young warriors with more scars than coin, widows with hard eyes and sons nearly grown, hunters whose old chiefs had died in the madness of the demon years. Men and women who had heard that Torgoth, once a slave in the Underdark, once a companion of clerics, wizards, rogues, warlocks, and bards, had stood before Demogorgon and lived. More than lived. He had struck the final blow. Tales came with traders, with pilgrims, with drunken sellswords, with old barbarians leaning on spears. They sang of the perfect tools. They sang of the demon princes breaking against mortal steel. They sang of fire, blood, abyssal thunder, and Torgoth's axe buried in the hide of the prince of demons. Some other song versions said the axe had split Demogorgon's heart. Some claimed it had cut one of the demon lord's heads clean away. Some said Torgoth had laughed as he struck. That part was true, but the songs did not tell the whole truth. They did not tell of the pact. Long before the final battle, when the abyss seemed endless and even heroes could feel the doom pressing against the world, Torgoth had stood alone with his axe in hand and listened to the voice of Tupac, who spoke as Asmodeus, not in a temple, not in a circle of candles, not with priests chanting infernal verses around him. It had been simpler than that, a bargain offered in the quiet. Be the instrument of victory, of success, power for purpose. Victory, but for a small price. Asmodeus had promised that the axe would bite deeper than mortal steel, that it would carry the wrath of the hells into the flesh of the abyss, that when Torgoth struck Demogorgon, the blow would not be his alone. Torgoth had accepted. He did not think of it as corruption. He did not kneel. He did not praise. He did not pretend to love the Lord of the Nine Hells. He made a warrior's bargain. Give me the power to kill what stands before me, and I will use it. The axe answered in fire. When it struck Demogorgon, the pact fulfilled itself. But fulfilled did not mean ended. The axe remembered. It hung above the high seat in Torgoth's hall, its blade dark even when polished, its edge carrying a faint red line that no whetstone could remove. The weapon had been mighty before. Now it was something more, not intelligent perhaps, not as a wizard would define it. It did not speak in words. It did not bargain like a devil, or whisper in riddles like a hag, but it wanted. When he passed beneath it, the hair on his arms lifted. When men boasted too loudly in the hall, his eyes would drift toward it. When he woke in the cold hour before dawn, he often found himself standing barefoot on the rush-strewn floor, staring up at the weapon, while the whole keep slept around him. There were times he could feel the final blow again. For the first year, Torgoth tried to be what others needed him to be. He rode patrols with his kinsmen along the western road. He drove away raiders. He sent furs and timber to Loudwater. He broke a hobgoblin company near the old ford and sent their surviving captain back north without hands, so that all would know whose road it had become. Farmers blessed him. Merchants paid him gladly. Wick Taloman, the Archbishop of Istar in Loudwater, spoke well of him from the pulpit, naming him a rough but necessary shield upon the frontier. Beside him in those years stood Shargra, She was half-orc, broad-shouldered and fierce, with a warrior's bearing and a laugh that could cut through the noise of any feast hall. She had not come to Torgoth as a softening influence, nor as a courtly wife meant to tame the rough edges of a barbarian lord. Sharkra was a barbarian in her own right, raised among hard people in hard country, and she understood the old truths of strength, oath, blood, and survival. She believed a strong hand could keep a people alive. She believed scattered tribes would be broken unless gathered beneath a leader with the will to command them. She believed land had to be held, borders had to be defended, and enemies had to learn fear before they learned respect. Where others saw Torgoth's growing ambition and trembled, Shargra saw a man becoming what the world demanded of him. She knew of an influence, something unknown, unnamed. She did not trust it. In time she bore him 4 children. First came their daughter, Varka, a grim-eyed child who watched everything. Even as a girl, she preferred the training yard to the hearth and carried a wooden axe nearly as soon as she could walk. Then came Mora, clever, quick-tongued, and fearless, with her mother's laugh and her father's stubborn jaw. She learned early how to charm warriors twice her size into doing what she wanted. Their third daughter was Elska, quieter than her sisters, a child who listened to ravens and old songs and stared too long into fires. The shaman said she had a spirit sight in her. Torgoth said only that she had strong blood and heard the ancestors' calls. Last came his son, Korvag. The birth of a son shook the hall with celebration. Uthgard chiefs drank until dawn. Torgoth's trusted advisors, Hroth Bearbreaker, broke a table in joy, and Skaldi Wolfcrown composed 3 verses before the child had opened his eyes. Torgoth held the boy before the hearth and said nothing for a long while. Then he lifted Korvag toward the axe above the high seat.
My blood, my heir.
Shargra watched from her bed of furs, exhausted but smiling. The axe gave a low, red pulse only Torgoth perceived. 6 years after Mensoberranzan, the first council of tribes was called in the second spring after Korvag's birth. They came beneath gray skies and cold rain. Chiefs, shamans, shield maidens, oath speakers, beast tamers, and raiding captains from scattered Uthgard bands. Some came out of respect, some came out of curiosity, some came to test whether the stories were larger than the man. They found Torgoth waiting in the fighting yard, without cloak or crown. He wore no lord's circlet, only mail across his broad chest and a wolf skin over one shoulder. Shargra stood beside him, tall and hard-eyed, her own axe resting across her back. Around them gathered the 3 who had become closest to Torgoth in those early years. Hroth Bearbreaker stood like a siege tower in human shape, thick-necked and brutal, his beard bound in black iron rings. He had once killed an ogre with a tree log and considered that the least interesting thing about himself. Yrsa Redhand waited with her arms folded, her left palm painted crimson from wrist to fingertip. She was a tracker, a killer, and a woman who could look at a stand of peaceful trees and see 6 ambush paths, 3 burial sites, and the weakest point in the roots. Skaldi Wolfcrown smiled at everyone. That made him the most dangerous of the 3. He was young, handsome, silver-tongued, and ambitious in the way of men who believed destiny was something other people should bleed for. Torgoth gave them a feast and wrestling. A ring was marked in the mud. Torgoth took on all challengers and won handedly. By nightfall, the long hall shook with drums. Mead flowed. Old rivalries were drowned, if not forgotten. The visiting chiefs sat at Torgoth's tables, and Skaldi sang of the Underdark, of Menzoberranzan, of demon princes, of the perfect tools, standing where even kings would have fled. Torgoth noted the songs rang of heroism and triumph, but not the fear and doubt, but he shook it off. Fear and doubt cannot be shared. Then the song changed. Skaldi sang not of what Torgoth had done, but of what he might yet become. Not a keeper of roads, not a border lord, not a tame wolf guarding another man's flock, a banner chief, a war leader, a king. Torgoth sat in silence through the song, one hand around his drinking horn, the other resting on the arm of his chair. Sharkra sat beside him, their daughters near the hearth, young Korvag, asleep, against his nurse's shoulder. Above them, the axe caught the firelight. No one else saw the blade darken. No one else heard the low, satisfied hum. By the end of that spring, 5 Uthgard bands had sworn guest right and war oath in Torgoth's hall. By autumn, there were 9. The village below the keep became a town of hide, timber, smoke, and iron. Children learned to loose arrows at painted demon faces. Young warriors trained beneath Hroth's cudgel until they could keep their feet after a blow that would have felled a horse. Yrsa led hunting parties deeper and deeper beneath the eaves of the high forest, returning with maps scratched into bark and hide. Ruined watchposts, old elven stones, druid circles, hidden springs, settlements with no walls, settlements with walls, settlements with walls that would burn. Torgoth studied them all. The high forest was old. Too old, some said. It had swallowed armies before. Its trees remembered Netheril. Its shadows hid elves, trents, dryads, green dragons, forgotten gods, and things with antlers that walked like men beneath the moon. No wise lord ignored such a neighbor, but wisdom and hunger can wear the same cloak. The first clash came at the Blackroot Ford. A group of Torgoth's hunters crossed into a region claimed by a circle of druids who served the old powers of the forest. They returned with 2 men dead, one half-mad, and black thorns growing through the leather of their boots. The survivor claimed the trees had moved. He claimed a woman made of bark and crow feathers had warned them in the old tongue. "Turn back, axemen! The forest has bled enough." Hroth wanted 50 warriors by dawn. Yrsa wanted to find the druid's circle and leave their bodies hanging from sacred branches. Scaldi advised something subtler.
Let the druids strike first, then even Loudwater will call our answer justice.
Torgoth stared into the hearth. Sharkra leaned near him.
They killed your men?
I know.
Then why do they still breathe?
That night Torgoth dreamed of the battlefield before Demogorgon. Only the demon lord was gone. In its place stood the high forest, vast and dark, its trees twisting into the shape of antlers, claws, and elven faces. Roots coiled around his legs. Leaves whispered in languages he did not know. Somewhere within the wood, something laughed at him. Then a second presence entered the dream, measured, patient, clothed in red-black shadow. Asmodeus did not appear as a monster. He never needed to. He stood beside Torgoth as a nobleman might stand beside a promising general, hands folded over the head of a ruby-topped cane.
A ruler who waits for permission is merely a servant with a larger chair.
Torgoth looked toward him.
You gave the axe power to kill Demogorgon.
I gave you an instrument worthy of your hand.
And now it hungers.
Asmodeus smiled faintly.
It remembers its purpose, as do you.
You said Loudwater should remain untouched.
And so it should. Loyalty is useful. Istar's faith is not a trifle and not to be dallied with. Friendship, when properly maintained, can be an advantage, but also acts as a chain. But the forest has not sworn to you. The druids have not bent their knee. The elves have sent no tribute. They presume their age is authority.
Asmodeus's smile sharpened.
Correct them.
When Torgoth woke, the axe was in his hand. By morning the warband rode. They found the Blackroot Circle 3 days later, in a hollow where ancient stones rose from the moss, each carved with weather-worn faces. The druids were waiting. Ravens lined the branches. A stag with bone-white antlers stood motionless behind them, watching with eyes too human for any beast. Their leader was Merundra Thornvale, an old half-elven druid with silver hair braided around black feathers. Her staff was living oak, and mushrooms grew where its end touched the earth. 6 druids stood with her. Around the hollow, awakened trees shifted their roots beneath the soil. Torgoth rode at the front of his warriors. Hroth carried a maul. Ursa had vanished into the trees an hour before. Skaldi remained close enough to witness, far enough to survive. Merundra raised one hand.
No father, son of the open sky.
Torgoth dismounted.
I am Torgoth.
I know what you are called.
Then you know what I have done.
I know you helped save this world from demons. That does not grant you leave to become one.
The warriors behind Torgoth muttered. Hroth's grip tightened. Torgoth's expression did not change.
My men were killed.
Your men crossed a warded boundary after warning signs were given.
They were hunters.
They were scouts.
Torgoth stepped closer. The white stag lowered its head. Merundra did not retreat.
The high forest is not empty land. It is not timber waiting for axes. It is not a prize for a warlord whose blood has grown restless.
At that, something in Torgoth's face hardened.
Careful, druid.
Care is what brought me here. Fear would have kept me hidden. You are still close enough to turn back.
The wind passed through the trees. For one moment there was a chance. It was small, fragile, and perhaps already doomed, but it existed. Torgoth could have taken the warning. He could have returned to his keep. He could have remained the shield of the border, the hero of loud water, the rough friend of priests and elves and old companions. Then an arrow hissed from the trees. No one ever learned who loosed it first, and struck Hroth in the shoulder. The great warrior roared, and the hollow became war. Roots burst from the ground, grappling men by the ankles. Ravens exploded from the trees in a black storm. One awakened oak swept 3 Uthgard aside with a single limb. Merundra lifted her staff and called lightning down through a cloudless sky. Torgoth charged through it. He had not brought the axe that slew Demogorgon. He had told himself he did not need it for this. But rage does not require the same weapon twice. He took a druid's spear through his side, broke the haft, and crushed the man's skull with the back of his hand axe. Hroth, laughing through blood, shattered the trunk of an awakened tree. Ursa appeared behind the stone circle and opened a druid's throat before vanishing again into fern shadow. Shargra fought beside Torgoth like a storm given human form. When Merundra transformed into a great brown bear, Torgoth met her head on. They crashed together beneath the stones, men and beast, claw and axe, blood and old magic. She tore his mail. He split her shoulder. She drove him back against one of the ancient stones, hard enough to crack it. For a heartbeat, he saw Demogorgon again. Not before him. Beneath him. Waiting to be struck, Torgoth roared and drove his axe into the bear's chest. When Merundra fell back into her own form, she was dying. She looked up at him, blood dark on her lips.
You think conquest will quiet it?
She whispered. Torgoth stood over her, breathing hard. Above them, the ravens had gone silent. Merundra's eyes moved past him, towards something only she could see.
It will only teach the hunger where to look next.
She died before he could answer. Afterward, Skaldi named it the Battle of Blackroot Ford. Within a month, 3 more tribes came to Torgoth's banner. Within 2, the first elven emissary arrived. His name was Kalith Arvindor, envoy of the Western Elves and speaker for several hidden settlements beneath the high forest canopy. He came dressed in green and silver, with a circlet of woven mithril leaves upon his brow, and no visible weapon but a slender ceremonial blade at his hip. That, Torgoth thought, was the first insult. No warrior came unarmed, unless he wished to say he felt no danger. Caliph entered Torgoth's hall under guest right. He was given a seat, bread, salt, and watered wine. He touched none of them. That was the second insult. Torgoth sat beneath the demon-slaying axe. Shargra stood at his right. Heroth, Ursa, and Scaldi remained near the pillars. Around the hall, Uthgard warriors watched in hostile silence. Caelith inclined his head.
Lord Torgoth,
Envoy,
I come in the hope that bloodshed may yet be contained.
then you should have come before your druids killed my men.
Caelith's expression remained composed.
I am told your men crossed into warded forest, ignored signs of warning, and carried axes marked for survey cutting,
They carried tools
for roads,
for my people.
for conquest.
The hall grew colder. Torgoth leaned forward.
You speak boldly for a guest.
I speak plainly because a softer voice would waste both our time.
Caelith continued.
The elves of the high forest do not seek war with you, nor do we forget what you and your companions did against the abyss. Valoric, Starshield himself, has spoken your name with respect.
That name settled differently in the hall. Even Torgoth did not dismiss it. Valoric Starshield, Knight of the Silver Gauntlet, Ambassador to Evermeet. Supposed prince of the new elven kingdom growing at the heart of the high forest. A name out of brighter songs. Caelith saw the flicker and pressed on.
Because of that respect, I am empowered to offer boundary oath. Your keep and settlements may hold the eastern march. Your roads may remain open. Your hunters may range certain marked lands by season. In return, you will cease fort building west of the Black Route, withdraw your warriors from the sacred groves, and surrender those responsible for the burning of the Thornvale dead.
Shargra's eyes narrowed. Torgoth did not move.
Surrender my warriors.
Those who desecrated the bodies, yes.
They honored victory.
They butchered the fallen and hung them from trees.
They warned others.
Caelith's composure cracked, but only slightly.
Then hear me clearly, Lord Torgoth. If you continue into the high forest, the elves will resist you, the druids will resist you, the forest itself will resist you. Whatever gratitude exists for your past deeds will not purchase silence in the face of this.
Torgoth rose. The hall rose with him. Not physically, not all at once, but every warrior in the room became more present. Hands shifted to weapons, feet planted, the air filled with the coming shape of violence.
You come into my hall, refuse my bread, name my victories murder, and demand I hand over my own blood.
Caelith looked up at him.
I came to prevent a war.
You came to tell me where my land ends.
He stepped down from the high seat. Above him the axe gave a low sound. This time others heard it, a faint ring of metal, though no hand had touched the blade. Caelith's eyes flicked upward. For the first time, he looked afraid. Torgoth stopped before him.
Go back to your hidden lords. Go back to Valoric. I remember the old friendships. Tell him Loudwater is safe. Tell Wick the roads are safe. Tell any farmer who bends knee that my shield remains over him.
He leaned closer.
But tell the elves this. I will not be fenced like cattle. I will not ask permission from trees. I will not surrender my warriors to those who have never stood where I stood, never killed what I killed, never paid what I paid.
Calith's voice was quiet.
And if Valoric himself asks you to stop?
For a moment, Torgoth said nothing. Then his eyes lifted to the axe. The pulse came again. Slow, heavy, certain.
Then he should come himself.
Calith left before sunset. No one harmed him. That was the last mercy of the meeting. In Torgoth's hall that same night, another voice came calling. The fire had burned low. Snow pressed against the shutters. The warriors slept after a night of boasting, drinking, and sharpening blades. Torgoth sat alone beneath the axe, staring into embers.
You are troubled.
This time, he did not appear as a dream. He stood beside the hearth in waking flesh, immaculate and calm, dressed in black with a crimson waistcoat, a ruby cane beneath both hands. Torgoth did not reach for a weapon.
You come boldly.
I come honestly.
Torgoth gave a humorless grunt.
No devil comes honestly.
On the contrary, we are far more honest than most gods. We want obedience, order, hierarchy, ambition properly directed, power placed in hands strong enough to wield it. Mortals dislike this honesty, so they call it corruption.
The firelight did not touch his shadow.
You are being tested, Torgoth, by hesitation.
Torgoth looked toward him. Asmodeus smiled faintly.
Wick will worry, Valoric will counsel restraint, the elves will speak of balance, druids will speak for trees because trees cannot contradict them. All of them will ask you to remain smaller than you are.
Asmodeus stepped closer.
You know what rulership is, not the soft version sung by temple choirs. Real rulership, the kind that makes roads safe because bandits hang beside them, the kind that lets children sleep because enemies fear to cross the border, the kind that takes wild land and gives it a single will.
My will.
Yes, your will.
Outside, the wind moved over the keep walls. Below, in the village, hundreds, maybe thousands, slept under Torgoth's protection. Uthgard families, warriors, smiths, children, widows. His daughters slept beneath his roof. His son, Korvag, slept beneath the banner that would one day be his inheritance. Torgoth thought of the forest, its hidden paths, its druids, its elves, its refusal.
Power unused is merely decoration. That axe did not choose a man meant for patrols.
Torgoth's jaw tightened.
I chose the axe.
Did you? The axe stepped on by the prince of demons, then turned by your request to fight those demons in your hands. That axe.
The question hung between them. For the first time that night, Torgoth stood. He reached up and took the weapon from its place above the high seat. The hall seemed to breathe in. The axe was warm, not hot, alive. Asmodeus watched with satisfaction plain upon his beautiful, terrible face.
What would you have me do?
I would have you become inevitable.
By dawn, horns sounded from the keep. Messengers rode to every sworn tribe. Heroth began mustering warriors. Ursa vanished into the high forest with 20 scouts and orders to mark every elven trail between Blackroot and the Moonwells. Shargra stood beside Torgoth upon the wall walk as the first banners rose in the cold morning light. She did not ask him to stop. She did not ask whether the voice had come again. She only looked out over the gathering warriors, the smoking roofs, the training yards, the children of the tribes, and the dark wall of the forest beyond.
Our children will inherit more than stone walls.
Torgoth looked at her. Iron conviction shone in her eyes. Only the fierce love of a warrior wife who believed her husband was building a future worthy of their blood. Below them, the gathered warriors beat spear against shield until the sound rolled across the borderlands like thunder. The high forest waited, and Torgoth, Lord of the March, had decided that waiting was over. At dawn, Torgoth rode beneath a sky the color of old iron. His army followed him into the high forest. He did not come with torches held high or axes swinging at every living tree. He did not order sacred groves burned. He did not slaughter the first elves who watched from shadowed branches, though Hrothbear Breaker muttered that such mercy would only invite arrows later. He did not trample the druid stones at Blackroot, though Ursa Redhand told him that leaving them standing gave the forest a place to remember defiance. Torgoth came with banners. Black and red cloth snapped in the cold morning wind, each marked with the axe between horned skulls. Behind those banners marched Uthgard warriors, shield maidens, hunters, beast tamers, oath speakers, and young fighters eager to earn names of their own. They came with wagons, carpenters, smiths, priests of the old tribal ways, and families who had trusted Torgoth enough to follow him past the border of ordinary fear. Shargra rode at his side. She wore wolf hide over her shoulders and a breastplate marked by old scars. Her axe rested across her saddle. Her face was calm, but her eyes missed nothing. When the warriors looked at Torgoth, they saw the Lord of the March. When they looked to Shargra, they saw proof that this was not some passing raid. This was a people moving with purpose. The high forest closed around the army. It did not receive them kindly. Mist gathered between the trunks. Branches creaked, though no wind moved them. Ravens watched from high above, silent and numerous. Once at midday, the scouts found a path they had marked the week before, bent impossibly back upon itself. Another time, an old oak bled amber sap in the shape of a warning rune. No barbarian could read, though every shaman in the host went pale at the sight of it. Torgoth saw all of this. He respected it. That was another thing the elves would later fail to understand. Torgoth did not despise the high forest. He did not think it weak. He did not mistake age for emptiness or beauty for softness. He knew the forest was powerful. He knew it was alive in ways stone walls and merchant roads were not. But respect was not surrender. On the third day, he stopped before a wide ridge, overlooking a green valley split by a silver stream. Ancient trees rose on all sides, their crowns woven so thick that sunlight fell in broken shafts. Elk moved below. Beyond the valley, old elven waste stones glimmered faintly beneath moss. Torgoth dismounted. The army halted behind him. Elven watchers appeared then, dozens of them, barely visible between leaves and trunks. Druid shapes moved among them, wolves, stags, owls, one immense brown bear with white markings across its muzzle. Shargra's hand shifted toward her axe. Torgoth lifted one hand. No one drew. He walked to the edge of the ridge and drove the butt of his axe into the earth. Not the demon-slaying axe. That weapon hung at his back, wrapped in black hide. This was a plainer war axe, iron and honest steel. Still, the sound carried.
I am Torgoth,
He called into the forest.
Lord of the March, Slayer of Demogorgon, Shield of the Eastern Road, Banner Chief of the gathered tribes.
The trees answered with silence.
This valley is now under my protection.
100 bowstrings tightened in the hidden green. Torgoth continued.
I will not burn your groves. I will not cut your heart trees. I will not forbid your rites. Your dead will remain buried. Your stones will stand. But this land will no longer be a knife at my people's throat. Roads will pass here. Watchtowers will rise. Those who trade, hunt, and travel under my peace will do so safely.
The elves retreated into the trees. The druids faded with them. The watchers remained unseen, but Torgoth could feel them. Every warrior could. No arrows flew.
I will take your silences as acceptance.
That evening, the first stakes were driven into the valley earth. The settlement that grew there was called Hrothgard March. In the old Uthgard tongue, the name meant something close to Red Oath Land, though Skaldi preferred to translate it as the blood-sworn march when singing for outsiders. Over time, both names were used. The people called themselves Marchfolk. The elves called them intruders. Loudwater called them troublesome allies. The druids called them a wound that had scabbed rather than healed. Torgoth called it his children's inheritance. 15 more years passed. Peace, strange and uneasy, settled over Hrothgard March. It was not a soft peace. It was not the peace of gardens and harps and councils, where every grievance found polite words. It was frontier peace, harsh and watchful, built from patrol routes, warning horns, oath stones, and the certainty that anyone who preyed upon the march would be hunted down. Torgoth excelled at that kind of peace. Demon cults were the first to disappear. Some had crept into the borderlands after the Great Abyssal Crisis, drawn by old scars in the world and the memory of demon princes. They met in cellars, caves, ruined shrines, and abandoned logging camps, painting two-headed symbols and whispering promises of the abyss's return. Torgoth gave them no trials. He knew enough of demons. When Yrsa found a cult of Demogorgon beneath an old mill, Torgoth personally led the attack. 7 cultists died with weapons in hand. 4 begged. 1 tried to call upon the Prince of Demons. Torgoth took up the infernal axe and split the altar in half.
He will not answer you here.
The cultists' prayer ended as a scream. Those that survived the assault were hung. After that, the Marchfolk began hanging demon skulls above their gates. Even when the skulls were only carved wood, children learned the signs of abyssal worship before they learned letters. Hroth trained patrols to break summoning circles before fighting anything inside them. Humanoids came next. Goblin tribes were pushed north. Orc raiders who would not bend knee were broken. Ogres were slain and their bones set along the old ford as warnings. A band of trolls that had nested near the Marsh of Blue Reeds was burned out over 3 nights, Shargra leading the final charge with her daughters watching from horseback under guard. Varka, then nearly grown, had her mother's fury and her father's directness. She trained with shield and axe until Hroth admitted she hit harder than most men twice her age. Mora grew into beauty, sharpened by wit. She learned names, debts, rivalries, and how to make chiefs agree before they realized they had been cornered. Elska became stranger with every year. Ravens came when she called. Once, when fever took several children in the lower village, she sat beside them through the night, singing a song none had taught her. By morning, the fever had broken. Wick's priests later claimed Istar's mercy had touched the hall. The tribal shamans said older spirits had listened. Elska said only that the fire had told her which words to use. Corvag grew broad, fierce, and adored. He followed Torgoth whenever allowed, carrying a practice axe and asking questions about roads, tribute, warbands, and why the elves would not simply swear peace properly, like sensible folk. Torgoth loved them all. That was the cruelest truth. He was no empty tyrant sitting alone with a cursed weapon. He was a husband, a father, a chief, a protector, and for years, perhaps even a good ruler by the standards of hard lands. Hrothgard March prospered, Loudwater prospered. The town around the old keep grew into Axholm, though traders from Loudwater still called it Torgoth's Keep. A market formed beneath the eastern wall. A shrine to Istar stood uneasily beside Uthgard's spirit posts. Wick sent priests, healers, and teachers. Torgoth allowed them in, though never without watching them. Roads widened. Timber halls multiplied. The march became a buffer between Loudwater and the darker things that moved beneath the high forest's edge. Even some elves grudgingly admitted that Torgoth kept monsters down. For a time, even Valoric's star shield had to concede the truth. Torgoth's rule was troubling, but it was effective. The high forest border grew safer. The roads held. Demon cults vanished, and trade increased. Loudwater prospered from trade, moving through Axholm. And so for years, everyone accepted what no one truly liked. The years hardened into legacy, and legacy became hunger. The march was no longer enough. It happened slowly, so slowly that even Shargra, who knew her husband's moods better than any living soul, did not see the exact moment the thought changed from defense to destiny. A road needed securing, then a hill beyond the road, then a ruined tower beyond the hill, then a druid grove whose rites frightened the settlers, then an elven watchpost that had shadowed too many patrols. Each step could be argued. Each step had reasons. Each step made the next one easier. At night, Asmodeus returned more often. Sometimes as the well-dressed counselor beside the fire. Sometimes as a voice in the axe. Sometimes openly, standing upon the wall walk beside Torgoth, while mortal guards looked away, without knowing why.
You have built order,
Asmodeus said one winter night. Below them, Axholm glowed with hundreds of lamps. Smoke rose from chimneys. The ring of hammers echoed late from the smithies. Children ran between halls with carved wooden axes and red cloaks.
I have built a home.
Such a modest word for a realm.
Realm.
Torgoth tasted the word. Asmodeus smiled.
Do not pretend you dislike it.
Torgoth said nothing. The devil continued.
The elves wait for you to die. The druids wait for your children to soften. Valoric waits for wisdom to find you. Wick waits for repentance. Everyone waits because they believe time serves them.
His ruby cane tapped softly against the stone.
Prove that time serves you.
Torgoth looked north. Deeper into the high forest, the new elven kingdom lay hidden beneath silver boughs and moonlit wards. They are rebuilding their power. From afar, they had watched human realms rise and fall like sparks from a fire. They believed themselves patient beyond the reach of mortal ambition. Asmodeus leaned closer.
Your son will inherit a border, or he will inherit a kingdom.
The word entered Torgoth like a blade sliding between ribs. Kingdom. Not a march, not a buffer, not a tolerated wound, but a kingdom. By spring, scouts rode farther than before. By summer, Skaldi's songs changed again. By autumn, Torgoth called the chiefs. Shargra listened as he spoke of the western groves, the hidden elven roads, the old arrogance of immortal courts that claimed land they did not defend, and judged men who bled to keep monsters from their doors. She heard the force in his voice. She saw the warriors respond. She saw Corvag, now a young man, watching his father, as if witnessing the birth of a legend. The campaign began under red banners. Torgoth rode at the head of the largest host Axholm had ever mustered. Uthgard tribes marched beside settled marchfolk. Hroth bore the war standard. Ursa led the scouts. Skaldi rode among the chiefs, speaking of destiny and insult, and the kingdom waiting beneath the trees. Corvag rode with the young warriors. Varka commanded a shield company. Mora remained in Axelholm to manage the town, the stores, and the chief's families, because she had the colder mind. Elska stood on the wall as they departed, ravens circling above her. When Torgoth looked back, he saw tears on her face. The army entered the high forest. This time, the forest did not merely watch. It resisted. Paths vanished, bridges rotted overnight. Horses screamed at shadows, men woke with roots wrapped around their throats. Elven arrows came from impossible angles, striking officers, scouts, banner-bearers, and then disappearing before retaliation could begin. The first true battle came beneath moon-white trees near the ruins of Shaelindir. Torgoth won. Elves fled before the Uthgard fury. The second, at the Fort of Fallen Stars, cost him over 100 warriors and one of Hroth's eyes. He won that too. The third never happened. Because Valoric's star shield came. He did not come alone. Silver horns sounded through the forest at dawn. Mist parted across a wide glade, ringed by ancient oaks and elven stones. There stood Valoric in shining armor, mounted upon a white charger barded in silver and blue. His shield bore the starburst of his house. His lance shone with restrained radiance. Behind him stood elven knights, archers, spellblades, and wardens of the high forest. But they were not the only ones. To Torgoth's shock, men of loud water stood among them, knights in the city's colors, priests of Istar. And at their center, older now but still straight-backed, stood Wick Taloman in white and gold, his holy symbol bright against his chest. Torgoth reined in, his army spread behind him. For a moment, the whole world held its breath. Valoric rode forward alone. Torgoth did the same. They met between armies, beneath drifting leaves. Valoric removed his helm. His face was ageless and sorrowful, the face of a knight who had seen too many good men choose roads that ended in blood.
Torgoth,
Valoric,
I had hoped not to meet you this way.
then you should have stayed in your silver halls.
I would have, had you stayed in yours.
Torgoth's fingers tightened around the haft of the infernal axe. Behind Valoric, Wick stepped forward.
Torgoth, this can still end. Turn back. Keep the march. Keep Axholm. Keep your family. Do not make us choose between the man you were and the lives you now threaten.
Torgoth looked past them, to the ranks of Loudwater knights.
Your roads are safe because of me. Your farms are safe because of me. Your priests walk my lands under my protection.
Yes, and that is why I grieve.
The words struck harder than insult would have. Torgoth's gaze moved back to Valoric.
The elves sent you to hide behind friendship.
No, they asked for aid. I came because I know what you are capable of. I came because if another man stood here, I would simply stop him.
And me?
Valoric's eyes saddened.
You, I will beg once.
Torgoth laughed then. It was not a joyful sound, and the laugh did not sound like Torgoth's alone.
Beg?
Turn back.
No.
Torgoth.
No.
The axe ignited, not in ordinary flame, but in a deep, red, infernal blaze that bled darkness at its edges. The heat of it rolled through the glade. Elven horses stamped and shrieked. Priests lifted holy symbols. Wick's face went pale, not from fear, but recognition.
So it is true, you bargained for it.
Torgoth lifted the axe.
I bargained to win.
Asmodeus's voice coiled through the flame, audible only to Torgoth.
Show them what victory made of you.
Valoric lowered his helm over his face. The duel began with thunder. Torgoth charged first. Valoric met him with lance and shield, the white charger surging forward beneath him. The first impact cracked across the glade like a storm in breaking over mountains. Torgoth's axe sheared through the lance haft, but the blow drove him back 3 steps and tore a burning line across his chest. He laughed and came on. Valoric dismounted. Sword met axe. Silver light struck infernal fire. Around them, armies watched in silence, no one daring to break what had become more than single combat. This was judgment. This was history, choosing a shape. Torgoth fought like the man who had struck Demogorgon. Valoric moved with impossible discipline, not matching Torgoth's rage, but surviving it, turning it, letting the great axe spend itself against shield, stone, and air. His moon blade flashed like starlight on water. He cut Torgoth once across the thigh, again beneath the ribs, again across the brow, sending blood into the barbarian's eyes. Torgoth's rage deepened. The axe roared. Asmodeus laughed in the fire. Torgoth answered with a blow that shattered Valoric's shield entirely. The broken halves fell smoking to the grass. A cry went up from both armies. Torgoth raised the axe overhead for the killing stroke. For one heartbeat, he saw everything. Shargra on the wall of Axholm, Varka with her shield company, Mora counting stores by lamplight, Elska weeping beneath ravens, Korvag watching with a son's fierce pride, the tribes, the roads, the march, the kingdom he had almost made. Then Wick shouted a prayer to Istar. Light flooded the glade, not enough to burn Torgoth, not enough to stop him, but enough to make the infernal fire around the axe recoil. Only for a breath, only for a mortal instant. Valoric moved within that instant. His moonblade pierced Torgoth beneath the breastbone. Silver light erupted from Torgoth's back. The axe fell from his hands. The infernal flame went out. Torgoth staggered, and Valoric caught him upright, one hand gripping the barbarian's shoulder, as if they were companions after a battle, rather than enemies at the end of one. Torgoth tried to speak. Blood filled his mouth. Valoric leaned close.
I will spare them.
The elf knight whispered.
Your wife, your children, as many as I can.
Torgoth's eyes found his. For a moment the rage cleared. Not vanished. Never that. But cleared enough.
Axholm, my family.
Torgoth rasped.
Safe.
Torgoth gave the smallest nod. Then he fell. The sound of his body striking the earth ended the war. For a few terrible breaths, both armies stood frozen. Then Korvag screamed. The young man spurred forward, but Shargra intercepted him before he reached the field, seizing his reins with one hand and striking him across the face with the other. "Live!" she snarled at him. "You will live, or he died for nothing." Korvag shook with fury, but he did not charge. That saved him, but Torgoth did not end in the glade. He woke to iron. Not chains, at least not the mortal kind. A floor of black iron stretched beneath him, polished enough to reflect fire. Vast pillars rose into red darkness. Rivers of molten gold ran through channels cut into the floor, each one filled with screaming faces that surfaced and vanished like bubbles in boiling pitch. Before him stood a throne so immense that mountains would have seemed like footstools beside it. Upon that throne sat Asmodeus. Not the counselor by the hearth. Not the elegant traveler with the ruby cane. The true lord of the 9 hells towered in terrible majesty, robed in red and shadow, crowned in horns and law, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful when resting against a throat. His eyes held contracts older than mortal kingdoms. His smile contained the patience of damnation. Torgoth rose slowly. His body was whole. The wound Valoric had given him was gone. His axe lay at his feet. The infernal one, the demon-slaying one. Torgoth looked around.
Am I dead?
Asmodeus smiled.
Gloriously.
Torgoth picked up the axe. It fit his hand as though it had never left. He didn't feel dead. For a moment, rage returned. Not the mindless fury of battle, but the deeper anger of a man realizing he has been moved across a board.
You knew I would fail.
Of course.
The answer was so calm that Torgoth almost attacked him. Almost, but knew it would be folly. Asmodeus leaned back upon the throne.
That was the point. My army broke.
Your army returned home resentful.
My lands were taken.
Reduced, not taken.
My children are under Wick's hand.
And your dutiful wives.
The Lord of the Nine Hells lifted one clawed finger, and images appeared in the air between them. Axholm beneath church rule. Uthgar chiefs muttering over fires. Young warriors whispering forbidden songs. Hroth in exile, gathering angry men. Ursa moving like a ghost beneath the trees. Scaldi's verses traveling faster than priests could burn them. Corvaig standing in a churchyard, eyes fixed westward, jaw set exactly like his father's. Asmodeus's smile widened.
You thought conquest meant possession of land. A common mortal error. Land changes hands, walls fall, borders shrink, but resentment? Resentment travels. It breeds in silence. It survives sermons. It outlives treaties. Before, I had one lord with one axe on one border. Now I have grievances scattered among tribes, churches, elves, and heirs. I have songs banned by priests, which means every young fool will want to learn them. I have sons wondering what was stolen from their fathers. I have daughters learning law so they may one day bend it. I have a widow no one dares insult. I have Wick planting order with trembling hands, and Valoric wondering whether mercy was wisdom or merely delay.
He leaned forward.
Well done.
Torgoth stared at him. There was praise in the words. Real praise. That somehow made them worse.
I was your sacrifice.
You were my investment.
Torgoth looked down at the axe.
What becomes of me?
At that, Asmodeus laughed. The sound rolled through the iron hall, like gates closing across eternity.
Ah, there it is. The mortal question. What reward? What punishment? What station in the hierarchy?
His eyes burned brighter.
Do you imagine I would make you a fiend?
Torgoth said nothing.
No, no promotion to pit fiend is good enough for you.
The axe flared. The red line along its edge widened until the whole blade seemed filled with captured battle.
You are not meant to stand in ranks beneath some duke of hell. You are not meant to grow fat on ceremony, repeating orders in a fortress of iron. You are not meant for wings, titles, and predictable cruelties.
Asmodeus descended one step from the throne. The whole plane seemed to recoil from him.
You are an answer to a specific question. What happens when mortal rage, heroic reputation, tribal loyalty, and infernal purpose are bound to a single edge?
Torgoth lifted his head. Asmodeus pointed to the axe.
You and that weapon will serve me in other endeavours.
What endeavors?
Wars that must begin as whispers, kingdoms that must fracture through pride, heroes who must win exactly enough to become dangerous, barbarians who must be shown a crown just beyond reach. Devils may corrupt the greedy easily enough, but men like you?
The Lord of the Nine Hells smiled with immense satisfaction.
Men like you teach the righteous to fear their own champions.
Torgoth looked again at the images. Axholm, Shargra, his children, his people, The march. His death had not ended the story. It had seeded it. He understood, then. Not all of it. Perhaps not even most. But enough. Asmodeus had never needed him to conquer the high forest. He had needed him to make the attempt. He had needed him heroic enough to be mourned, violent enough to be feared, justified enough to be debated, and fallen enough to be useful. Torgoth began to laugh. It started low in his chest, then grew. It was not happy. It was not even sane. But it was his. The axe pulsed in time with it. Asmodeus watched, pleased. At last, Torgoth rested the weapon across his shoulder and looked up at the throne.
Who do you want dead?
Asmodeus returned to his seat. Beyond the iron hall, somewhere in the infinite machinery of hell, gates began to open.
Not dead.
Said the Lord of the Nine Hells. His smile was terrible.
Not yet.
And Torgoth, once Lord of the Red March, once slayer of Demogorgon, once husband, father, warlord, protector, and fool, stood before the throne of Asmodeus with his axe in hand. Ready to serve. Ready to rage. Ready to begin again.